They just pulled it out of their hat. If you do the research, it wasn't medical.
There is no peer-reviewed
No.
gun-related research that shows that 10 rounds matters in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So our government is notorious for pulling numbers out of their hat. Hey, if you listen to Gun Owners Radio, you know how I feel about the current government financial situation. So it's no secret I'm a big believer in diversifying your money and precious metals like gold and silver. But when it comes to buying precious metal, you need the right company in your corner. That's why we've patterned the top-rated precious metal company, Goldco, because reputations do matter. Goldco is a 6-time 5,000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, and they've helped people like you and me place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And now they're offering just to Gun Owner Radio supporters up to $10,000 in bonus silver when opening a qualified IRA. This is your opportunity to protect yourself from our out-of-control, corrupt government. Don't pass it up. Grab your phone today. Give Goldco a call. Take action today so you don't regret it tomorrow. That's Goldco, 855-61-6354, 612-6354. That's 855-612-6354. And make sure you tell them you heard it right here on Gun Owners Radio. All right, so are we going to talk about the Office of Gun Violence?
No, sir, we are not.
I didn't think so.
No, we are changing it up. We are. So if you are paying attention to the news on Friday,
yes,
whether you have cable, you watch the news, you're on social media, whatever it may be, you likely may have heard that there was some movement on the magazine capacity situation that we have here in California.
Which way did it move?
Well, it's not fully moved yet.
But it's getting ready to.
It's yeah.
We are in California.
So the current status is that you are currently limited to a max of 10 round magazines in California. Some firearms are going to have a lesser capacity depending on what you're looking at, but you can have no more than 10 unless you had acquired them previously during Freedom Week, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a case in the courts that was challenging that, and there was a ruling. There has been a stay put on it. And from here, I would actually love to hear Gary's take on it, because Gary kind of knows the inner workings of the system. And we were kind of talking about some of the options and the way this path could go forward. And I'm curious to have his assessment on that.
It's really fascinating, the path forward from here. And one of the things that I see with this all the time is the co-opting of the language by the government. And what I mean by that is the high-capacity magazine.
No,
it's
that's
not
standard.
a high-capacity magazine.
That's standard.
It's a standard capacity magazine that you have identified as being
isn't
a high
assault rifle. Not really.
David.
What?
Well, it's certainly assaulting people's senses, but it's not functioning any differently than every other rifle that's semi-automatic center fire.
Exactly.
And
so
really
how come nobody's corrected that verbiage on the high capacity?
People do in the gun world.
We do all the time.
No, but I'm talking about in the lawmaking, in the government.
Because that's what they want. You control the language, you control the population.
Control the narrative.
Sons of a gun. I never knew that.
On Friday, Judge Benitez, also identified by some in the gun community as Saint Benitez. Mm-hmm. He's a federal district court judge, ruled that California's
low capacity
misnamed high-capacity magazine ban was unconstitutional because, in fact, it had no rational basis in fact. In order to understand what he decided this on, you got to jump back a little bit to Bruin, New York Rifle and Pistol against Bruin, U.S. Supreme Court case that dealt with New York CCWs. Bruin changed the test. This is the most important thing that came out of Bruin for me. It's not even the fact that they allowed people in New York to have CCWs when they couldn't. The most important thing that came out was what test is used when you claim that a government regulation violates the Second Amendment. And there used to be two parts to the test. The first part was, let's look at historical analogs in United States history and see if this regulation has been tried before and was consistent with the Second Amendment in our history. That was part one. And then part two was, assuming that there is no historical analog for this, is it a good idea? And you know how many of the left-leaning states came out, every gun regulation is a good idea.
Sure.
Therefore, everything would pass constitutional muster except for the most offensive of gun bans. Well, that second part to the test went away. The good idea fairy no longer exists with regard to regulation and government-imposed firearms regulations. Now the only thing that can exist is there a historical analog for this government regulation in our history? And
That's
so
it.
and it just makes it much more difficult for the state to justify any expansive gun control. And this was part of it. Is there a rationale in our history for magazine limitations? And Judge Benitez, who I think is a fabulous writer, it's a 72-page opinion, but it doesn't really get weighed down with the legalese. The beginning does, expanding the procedure for how this happened, but he really uses individual points. And I like this one that he brought forward was that in our history, if you didn't show up with 20 rounds, you were going to get fined. And if he
That's
put that
true.
in his opinion, and so if this had been a wrestling match, he would have got 1 point for a reversal.
Yeah.
You know, it was just really brilliant writing. I would encourage everybody who has the opportunity to read that if you're interested.
How
in
would they find it?
You could go online onto the U.S. District Court website, or you could just pump in Judge Benitez's opinion. Go on CalGuns. I think there's a
I'm
link
sure
to it
they
on
have it.
CalGuns. CalGuns has a link to everything.
I think they do. Isn't that something?
And so he ruled that it didn't have a historical analog, and so the rule had to be unconstitutional. Here's the interesting part. Moving ahead, where are we going? Because he stayed his ruling. It's not willy-nilly. You can't go out and order your normal capacity magazines now. He stayed his own ruling for 10 days.
And why did he do that?
He wanted the hearing to, I'm assuming he wanted a hearing to happen in the Ninth Circuit on an extension of the 10-day stay. If the defendant in the case, the state of California, wants to get that stay, they're going to have to show a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits. And his opinion was tight. I'm not sure if it's going to get stayed or not. I'm leaning towards that the Ninth Circuit will grant a stay, which means that the rule won't be his opinion won't be in effect while it's being litigated in the Ninth Circuit. Because the states, if they haven't already appealed, they're going to appeal sometime this week, and then they will request an extension of the stay. There'll be a hearing on whether the stay should be extended. That's the first fight in the case. But there's really interesting stuff there as to what do we want to have happen. We, the gun community, gun owners, want to have happen in the Ninth Circuit. What do we expect to happen?
Yeah.
What do we expect to happen?
Well, if you're looking at the historical rulings with regard to gun regulations of the Ninth Circuit, we're going to lose. We're going to lose quickly. The only reason that we might win with the first 3-judge panel we get is because we have a good draw of either George Bush or Trump judges, and we'll win that 2-1 or 3-0. But the question is whether we want to do that. Does the gun community want a quick win? Because likely what will happen is the same thing that happened when this was litigated in 2017. The panel will support the finding that the regulation was unconstitutional, and then the entire Ninth Circuit will take the case and overrule the panel and say that panel was wrong and the district judge was wrong, or in this case, Judge Benitez. So do you want to get to the Supreme Court in 3 years, or do you want to get to the Supreme Court in 2 years? Because if you get a panel and you lose right away, there won't be an en banc hearing for that.
Yeah.
And you can get to the whole Ninth Circuit, and then you can get to the Supreme Court in 2 years. Although the way that the entire country is right now, somebody may beat us to the Supreme Court on this issue in 2 years. But it's interesting if you look at the United States that there are, I think, 35 states that have no capacity restriction on firearms with regard to magazine. There's only 15 states that have restrictions. Interestingly, Hawaii only has a regulation, I think, on handguns, not on long guns with regard to capacity, although they're one of the most restrictive states in the country with regard to firearms regulation. Right. But this is another thing that Judge Benitez put in his opinion, that this is just pure speculation and random, and it means nothing, your choice of 10 rounds, because Delaware and Colorado have, and I don't remember the numbers that attach. One of them are 17 rounds and one of them is 12 rounds. Well, why 17 and why not 10? It's
Just
like
an
a line
arbitrary
from
number.
Animal House. Why not? Yeah, there's no rationale behind the capacity. Why can't it be 6 rounds? How about 4? And I'm a skeptical person. I think the 10-round restriction is made so that once we have a 10-round restriction, there continue to be mass shootings, notwithstanding who's doing the mass shooting, and most mass shootings are committed by gang members or criminals and not school shooters. Once you get 10 rounds, then we'll go down to 5 rounds because we're still getting mass shootings with 10 rounds. Then we'll go to 5 rounds. Maybe we'll go to 3. And maybe we'll go to 2.
And then maybe we'll go to none.
And then we'll go to 1.
Yeah, 1.
So you get 1 round in a single shotgun.
And you better know how to shoot.
Right.
Well, but that was my issue in school. Who says green grass is green grass? Okay, who said that has to be called green grass? And it's almost the same thing as who says 10 rounds, or who says you got to stand 6 feet apart not to get COVID. I mean, because that was an arbitrary number. They just pulled it out of their hat. If you do the research, it wasn't medical.
There is no peer-reviewed
No.
gun-related research that shows that 10 rounds matters
That's
in
what I'm saying.
any way.
Mm-hmm.
So our government is notorious for pulling numbers out of their hat to fit the narrative.
And other places.
Well, that's true too. I know where they store them, but I mean, it's really. Yeah, I could see why you would enjoy your job.
It's interesting every day.
You should be right.
The government's never disappointing when it comes to stupidity.
Keeps you on your toes.
I mean, it's got to be a prerequisite to work for them, or at least be elected.
And that's why I think Judge Benitez did such a good job. He pointed out the logical fallacies of all of their arguments. And so they're just grasping at straws.
But how many of those judges do we have? I mean, you would think the other side would love to eliminate as many Benitez as they could.
That's federal district court judges and circuit court judges are about close as we've got to royalty in the United States. They have a job for life unless they get impeached by Congress or die.
Oh, really? Well, that's good.
The only way you're losing your job as a federal court judge is to be charged and convicted of a crime or be impeached. Gotcha. And then you'll get impeached after you
or
get
retire.
Well, if he wants to retire, who's going to retire? They're still writing their book. Hey, you ever want to go get a pilot's license? Well, if you look out the window, the Blue Angels just went by. And here in San Diego, pilots can fly almost every day, which makes San Diego one of the best places to learn how to fly in the world. Learn to fly with San Diego Flight Training International. Check out the deal just for Gun Owner Radio listeners. 1 hour of ground school, 1 hour of flight with an instructor, and yep, you get to fly. Normally that's $400, but for you, $350. You just got to mention you heard it on Gun Owners Radio. Getting started is super easy. Call 858-569-1822. That's 858-569-1822. All right. So we're going to go back to our guest.
We are. We have a little bit. So by way of along the same topic about the magazine capacity limit of 10, one question that I have that I would like to kind of discuss a little bit
and
further.
by the way, we have Gary Gibson.
Gary, yeah, thank you.
So I thought I'd better let
Thank
people
you,
know he's here, and he has nothing to do with Not Me SD,
Thanks for that clarification.
which is I read earlier.
I appreciate that. So as Gary mentioned in the last segment, so if you were in California and you own firearms, you likely heard about Freedom Week and all the happenings that were happening back in 2017. And so by way of kind of discussing what's happening currently about it going before the Ninth Circuit and how that has the opportunity to kind of go up to the Supreme Court, the one question that I have that I would love Gary to expand on is how did that go about in 2017? Did it make it to the Supreme Court?
If I remember rightly out of reading Judge Benitez's opinion, he talks about this in the very beginning of his opinion, that it was a win in 2017, that the magazine capacity restriction was found unconstitutional by Judge Benitez. That's where Freedom Week came from.
Right.
Because he didn't stay his opinion. And the state was slow off the gun. And so there was a week when there was no stay, Freedom Week.
Gotcha.
And then the Ninth Circuit put a stay on the case, and that was the end of Freedom Week.
Right.
So as far as I know now, all gun owners I talk to got their normal capacity magazines during Freedom Week. And that's the case went up to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit overruled Judge Benitez eventually. I'm not sure if I think the panel may have supported Judge Benitez and it was overruled en banc. I could be wrong on that. And then it went to Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court held the case because they were deciding Bruin. And then they kicked the case back after they decided Bruin. And with the new test that we just talked about.
And that's
in the last
why we're
segment.
here today.
And it got kicked back to Judge Benitez, consistent with Bruin, to make his ruling consistent with Bruin, and he just did. He made his ruling consistent with the historical analog for the Second Amendment.
And now it's going to start moving back to the
Now it's
Supreme
going back
Court.
the same direction. So it's an interesting, as George Bush would say, strategery question.
Yeah.
Do you want to lose fast in the Ninth Circuit, get a bad panel, have them overturn Judge Benitez's ruling, at which case the plaintiffs can take an appeal to the Supreme Court, because I really doubt that the Ninth Circuit is going to have an en banc ruling that overturned Judge Benitez's opinion. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure that they will have an en banc panel if Judge Benitez's ruling is upheld.
What's an en banc?
En banc just means all of the judges or the majority of the judges in the Ninth Circuit. We will get a 3-judge panel. All appeals show up before a 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit.
Okay.
And then if that panel makes a ruling and somebody requests an en banc panel, which is the majority of the judges in the Ninth Circuit, they will review it.
And the benefit to that
Add
is-
another year.
Oh, and it adds another year.
Just about.
But the chances are still you may not win. It may kick back to Bonta.
The chances are that this case is going to wind up in the Supreme Court in
Again.
some fashion. If I am surprised and a panel supports Judge Benitez's opinion and the Ninth Circuit denies an en banc hearing, then the state of California will take it to the Supreme Court, which I'm hoping will deny review pretty quickly.
That's right. They have that.
They do have that option. I've heard, a lot of different theories about what people want to do with this. People, I mean people inside state government want to do with this. Do they want to limit this ruling to just California? Because if they appeal it, it'll apply to all of the western states, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, states that have magazine restrictions. Mm-hmm. It will apply to those states. And so if you don't take an appeal and you just leave Judge Benitez's ruling in place, California takes one for the team.
California won't do that.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
Well, I don't think so because of it. And what hits me is that Governor Newsom's 28th Amendment push. It would be inconsistent with his desire for a national constitutional convention to add a new amendment to the Constitution, eliminating the Second Amendment.
Can you explain to our listeners what the 20th Amendment is that they're trying to pass?
Well, the 28th Amendment is a policy vehicle for Governor Newsom to replace Joe Biden as the Democrat nominee for president and then run nationally. Being facetious.
Just a little.
Not really.
But the 28th Amendment is a amendment to the Constitution that Governor Newsom is moving forward. State of California has not ratified the 28th Amendment because there's no chance. We don't have a constitutional convention to do that. But they have supported it with legislation saying we want the 28th Amendment to be added to the Constitution. What it does is significantly restrict gun owners' rights. It incorporates in the Constitution the assault rifle ban. It incorporates in the Constitution that firearms ownership is not a personal right.
Even though it states in
Their
the Constitution.
Well, the Second Amendment's going to change. 28th Amendment's going to change the Second Amendment.
So that's what they're hoping for.
That is the goal. But they're never getting there. And the reason they're never getting there, and it's just a political proposal, is that the only way that you can change the United States Constitution is either a 2/3 vote in the House of Representatives and the Senate, puts it into the states, and then the states have to vote that by 75%. That means 75% of the states have to agree to change the Second Amendment. And right now it's the other way with regard to constitutional or so-called constitutional carry.
Right.
We're just going the different direction than the 28th Amendment.
Well, I was talking about this earlier to somebody. Actually, again, back to the off-road show. When you turn around and you say the government comes after, to close down the beach area and they lose, they just go back, regroup, come up with another way to go back on that same topic and close it. That's where I came up with they keep using our money to fight us, and we have to use our own money to fight them. So it's just a vicious circle. Something needs to be done about that from a litigation point of view. There should be, I don't know how you do it, but there's got to be some way it's just like to keep them from doing that.
If you live in California, the only way to do that is to move or change the balance in the legislature, because all of those regulations are coming out of the legislature, and the legislature is a Democratic supermajority. You're never getting any legislation that you want that you consider centrist or right.
Yeah. And go back to off-road. Pismo Beach used to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres.
Used to be being the key word there.
Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds. Now there's 1 mile that you can camp on for $10. And it was a gift to the Californians from the government. Pismo Beach was ours. Yeah, it's insane. Lawyers, I tell you.
Guys, I understand why we're hated.
You got to know. But I like you. I like another one, too. I can tell you off air. He was a trademark lawyer. That's a great story. But, all right, so, and I guess this just falls right into, this is why you need to join organizations like San Diego County Gun Owners. Because it takes money, and it takes somebody like Michael Schwartz, to be the point at the end of the spear. Because if we just ignore it, just leave it alone, then guess what? We're going to be run over.
Organization and money is the only way that you change government.
Yeah, it's the only way. And they've been doing it a long time, so they're pretty good at it.
Since 2015.
Well, and beyond. Wouldn't you say beyond? They've been after our guns for a long time.
Well, the government's been after our guns since
we had guns.
Well, certainly since the National Firearms Act in the 30s, they've certainly been after our guns.
And that's really it in a nutshell. And they, like I said, they don't care. They've got all the money they need to fight it. But if you don't have people like yourself and like Michael, and John Dillon, for example, that'll stand up and say no.
Yeah, I'm a fan of John Dillon.
Isn't he great?
I'm a good criminal lawyer, but he is a much better firearms policy and firearms individual rights lawyer than I am.
He's amazing. In fact, I ran into him at the gun prom, and I was impressed he shaved. Because every other time I see him, he's never shaved. So then I guess he just did a Zoom on KUSI. Mm-hmm. He's got a 4-day beard starting already. He hasn't shaved again. I was going to text him. But
he's got other things to worry about. He's a little busy.
Yeah.
This is an interesting story with this capacity ban. Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out. And there's a lot of strategy that can be played by both sides.
Well, and I think you explaining kind of the path forward, I think is important, because I think a lot of people are eager and anxious. I want it to be done now. And kind of if you look at it, you step back and look at the big picture.
The next fight's the stay.
Benefit. Right.
The next fight is the stay. That'll be the next big issue, is that 10-day stay going to be made in perpetuity until the litigation's over.
So what would that mean then?
Oh, it means that nothing would change with regard to the law for a year or two.
So we couldn't have our high-capacity magazines?
You can have your, I don't like that word.
Standard. The air quotes were there.
You can have your Freedom Week magazines and all of those that you bought during Freedom Week.
Right.
But would we have another Freedom Week?
Likely not.
So you really can't go buy them now at all.
Can't buy them now. If somebody buys or sells magazines now, they'd be in violation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they would love nothing better to catch somebody doing that. Yeah, interesting. All right.
I'm curious, really quickly, do you have any, since you're here, any words on SB2?
Yeah, a lot of words on SB2, but I can't say them on the radio.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.